Your grandmother grew more food on a quarter acre than you can grow on a full one today. And it wasn't because she worked harder than you. It's because the plant sitting in your garden right now is nutritionally a different species than the one she grew in 1950. Same name, same shape, same color, half the substance. And nobody in the agriculture industry wants you asking why. Stick with me for the next half hour because I'm going to walk you through the actual research, the actual numbers, and the actual reason your soil, your seeds, and your harvest have been quietly downgraded for 3 generations. And by the end, you're going to know exactly what to do about it on your own land, starting this season. If any of this hits home, hit that like button before we go further. Subscribe if you're serious about growing real food again, and drop a comment telling me what you're growing this year. Now let's get into it. Here's the number that should stop you cold. To get the same amount of iron your grandmother pulled from a single tomato in 1950, you'd need to eat 3 or 4 tomatoes today. Same fruit, same recipe, 4 times the volume just to break even. That's not a rounding error, that's a collapse. And it happens so slowly over so many decades that almost nobody noticed it happening in real time. You just grew up thinking a tomato was supposed to taste like watery cardboard, and a stalk of broccoli was supposed to do almost nothing for you nutritionally. That was never normal. That was engineered. Most gardening channels want to tell you this is a soil problem. Throw down more compost, buy a better fertilizer, maybe try a new seed brand, and the problem fixes itself. I need you to forget that advice right now because it's incomplete in a way that keeps you stuck for years. This isn't one broken thing, it's 6 broken things stacked on top of each other, built up over 3 generations, and if you only fix one of them, you'll wonder why your harvest still isn't what it should be. Stay with me because once you see all 6, the fix stops being a mystery. Let's go back before any of this started. Back to a time when almost every American family either grew their own food or knew exactly who did. Somewhere between 1900 and 1945, the seeds going into the ground were almost entirely heirlooms, open-pollinated varieties passed hand to hand, season after season, some of them grown on the same family land for 200 or 300 years. Nobody bred those seeds to survive a 1,000-mile truck ride or sit pretty under supermarket lighting. They were bred for one thing only, to perform, season after season, on that specific patch of dirt for that specific family in that specific climate. That kind of selection can't be bought. It has to be earned, one growing season at a time, for generations. And the soil those seeds went into wasn't just dirt. It was decades of manure, mountains of compost, years of cover crops, built up slowly with 0 synthetic inputs, often for 50 or 60 years before anyone living today ever touched a shovel in it. That soil was so alive with microbial activity that a plant growing in it almost couldn't help but be dense with nutrition. It didn't need to be forced. The ecosystem did the work. Then World War II ended, and everything changed in less time than it takes to raise a single child to adulthood. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. The chemical plants that had been manufacturing explosives during the war didn't shut down when the fighting stopped. They pivoted. The Haber-Bosch process, the same chemistry used to manufacture nitrogen for munitions, got repackaged almost overnight as synthetic fertilizer for American farms and gardens. The same chemical companies that spent years developing agents for chemical warfare rebranded their compounds as pest control for your backyard tomatoes. And the same scientists who spent the war years working on weapons spent the following 20 years convincing your grandparents that their tried and true methods, the compost, the saved seed, the crop rotation were primitive and outdated. Within 20 years, family farms started consolidating. Heirloom varieties got shoved aside for hybrids specifically bred to explode in size when you dumped synthetic nitrogen on them. And the soil biology that took 2 generations to build got wiped out by chemical applications in a matter of a few growing seasons. By 1970, the food coming out of American soil wasn't a slightly different version of what your grandmother grew. It was a fundamentally different product wearing the same name. Now here's where it gets interesting, because for a long time nobody had the receipts. Nobody had hard numbers proving what people were quietly noticing, that food just didn't taste the way it used to, that gardens weren't producing what they once did. That changed in 1999 when the USDA released updated nutritional data on common garden crops, and researchers who compared it to the original 1950 numbers noticed something they couldn't explain away. Every number was lower. Not slightly lower, significantly lower, across nearly every nutrient they measured. A biochemist named Donald Davis, working out of the University of Texas at Austin, decided somebody needed to actually study this properly instead of just speculating about it. His team compared USDA data from 1950 and 1999 across 43 common garden crops: tomatoes, peppers, broccoli, spinach, carrots, lettuce, strawberries. All the staples sitting in your garden right now. What they published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition in 2004 was bad enough that outlets like NPR and Scientific American covered it as a public health story nobody was addressing. Protein down 6%, calcium down 16%, phosphorus down 9%, iron down 15%, vitamin C down 20%, and the number that should genuinely bother you, riboflavin, the B vitamin your nervous system and energy metabolism depend on, collapsed by 38% in 50 years. Read that list again. Not one nutrient went up. Every single one that moved down. And Davis wasn't the only one finding this. The Cushy Institute ran their own analysis of USDA data from 1975 to 1997 and found declines even sharper than Davis did in some categories. Calcium down 27%, iron down 37%, vitamin A down 21%, vitamin C down 30%. Then, in 2020, a completely separate study looked at 166 years of archived wheat samples and found iron content had fallen from the range of 40 to 50 micrograms per gram back in the 1930s, down to 25 to 45 micrograms per gram in modern samples. Protein in some modern wheat varieties had dropped by as much as 65% against historical baselines. Copper in some common vegetables had fallen by 80%. Now here's the detail that should really get under your skin. Magnesium, zinc, vitamin B6, vitamin E, none of those were even tracked in the original 1950 data. Nobody has a clean before and after number for them, which means the actual decline could be a lot worse than anything published, and we genuinely don't know by how much because the baseline was never recorded. Do the math on what that means for your dinner table. To match your grandmother's iron intake from 1 tomato, you eat 3 or 4 today. To match her calcium from 1 stalk of broccoli, you eat 2. To hit her riboflavin levels from a normal serving of vegetables, you're eating 1.5 servings just to break even. Stack that across every fruit and vegetable you eat in a week, and the same volume of food that fed a family of 6 from a quarter-acre plot in 1950 now barely covers a family of 2 off the same footprint. The garden didn't just lose its output, the food coming out of it lost its substance. Both problems, same root cause, and we're just getting started. So why did this actually happen? The agriculture industry would love for you to believe this was an unavoidable side effect of progress, something nobody could have prevented. That's not what the research shows. Davis identified this directly in his paper. Modern breeding programs have spent decades selecting for 6 specific traits: faster growth, bigger size, pest resistance, disease resistance, shipping durability, and shelf appearance. Every one of those traits got prioritized over nutrient density because none of those traits benefit you. They benefit whoever is shipping that produce 1,000 miles and stacking it under grocery store lighting for 2 weeks. Davis put it plainly. Breeders got very good at making crops grow bigger and faster, but the plant's actual ability to pull nutrients out of the soil never kept pace with that growth. You end up with a plant that's bigger but emptier, faster but weaker, prettier but less alive. That's the nutrition side. Now let's talk about why your garden produces a fraction of what hers did, square foot for square foot. Because this is where most gardeners are making mistakes they don't even know they're making. First, she planted heirlooms selected over generations specifically for her climate and her soil. You're almost certainly planting hybrids bred for industrial farm conditions that have nothing to do with your backyard. Second, she built soil continuously, year after year, decade after decade, on the same ground. Most modern gardeners treat soil building as a one-time task instead of an ongoing relationship with the land. Third, she rotated crops and used companion planting, sometimes growing 3 different things in the same square foot across a single season. Most modern gardens plant 1 crop per row and call it done for the year. Fourth, she saved seed from her best performing plants every single season, slowly building genetics adapted specifically to her land. You're buying new seed every spring from a handful of large companies, and none of that seed has ever met your soil before. Fifth, she returned every scrap, every clipping, every bit of kitchen waste back into her garden as compost or mulch. The average household today sends 80% of that same organic material straight to a landfill. Sixth, she maintained a living ecosystem, beneficial insects, fungal partnerships, soil microbes, pollinators, all working the land alongside her. Most modern gardens treat soil like sterile potting mix and spray away anything that moves. Here's the part that ties it all together, the part the agriculture industry has spent the most money making sure you never connect. The collapse in your garden's productivity and the collapse in your food's nutrition are not 2 separate problems. They're the exact same disaster, caused by the exact same decisions, driven by the exact same incentive. When American agriculture pivoted hard into industrial production after the war, the fertilizer and seed companies needed something specific from you. They needed you to stop practicing the methods that had kept your family fed for free, generation after generation. So compost got rebranded as primitive, saved seed got rebranded as inferior, companion planting got rebranded as inefficient, heirlooms got rebranded as unreliable. Within 20 years, 2 generations of Americans had been convinced their own grandparents didn't know what they were doing. Meanwhile, the synthetic fertilizers and hybrid seeds and chemical sprays that replaced those free methods turned into a business worth tens of billions of dollars a year. A garden that feeds itself doesn't generate a single dollar of recurring revenue for anybody. That's the whole story in one sentence. Now here's the good news, and I mean genuinely good news. Every single one of those 6 factors is fully reversible on your own land starting this season. It won't happen overnight, and I'm going to be straight with you about that timeline in a minute, but the path back is well documented and it works. Start with your soil, because nothing else matters until this is right. Stop using synthetic fertilizer, and I mean all of it, including the products marketed as organic approved that still function the same way. Instead, start feeding the biology in your soil directly. Blackstrap molasses feeds the microbial community that's been starved for decades. Epsom salt restores magnesium that synthetic fertilizer programs strip out of the soil over time. A little activated charcoal worked into your beds creates a permanent carbon structure that gives microbial colonies a place to live for years, not weeks. Water from boiled potatoes delivers potassium in a form your plants can actually use without it leaching straight through the soil. And comfrey planted in a corner of your garden sends roots deep enough to pull minerals up from subsoil your vegetables can't reach on their own. None of these replace each other. They stack. Together, they start rebuilding the same soil chemistry your grandmother inherited from the generation before her. Next, get rid of the hybrid seed and bring in open-pollinated heirlooms. Then start saving your own seed from whatever performs best in your garden each season. There are seed banks out there preserving pre-1950 varieties specifically, and they're affordable and easy to find if you know to look for them. Every season you save seed, you're building genetics tuned to your exact soil and climate, something no seed catalog can sell you. Finally, kill the monoculture habit. Plant companion crops together instead of single rows of one thing. Rotate what goes where each season. Let beneficial insects do their job instead of reaching for a spray bottle every time something lands on a leaf. And every scrap of organic material from your kitchen and your yard goes back into that soil instead of into a garbage bag. Here's how to sequence it so you see results as fast as possible instead of guessing your way through years of trial and error. Season 1 is entirely about soil. Compost in spring, compost again in fall, heavy mulch with straw or leaves or grass clippings, and your kitchen and pharmacy amendments worked in on schedule. Don't expect a huge yield jump yet. Your soil is still waking up after decades of being chemically flatlined, and that takes real time, not a bag of miracle powder. Season 2? Bring heirlooms into at least half your garden and grow them right next to whatever hybrids you're still using, side by side, so you can see the difference with your own eyes instead of taking anyone's word for it. This is usually the season where growers start noticing the yield gap and the flavor gap for the first time. And it's usually the season where they stop doubting the whole process. Save seed from your best performers heading into Season 3. Season 3. Expand the heirloom beds. Introduce companion planting between your rows and tuck perennial nutrient miners like comfrey or yarrow into permanent corners where they can keep working for years without replanting. By Season 4 and 5, you're looking at a garden your grandmother would actually recognize. Tomatoes that taste like something. Carrots you don't even bother peeling because the skin is where the density lives. Greens that hold up in your refrigerator for days longer because the cell structure underneath is denser and stronger, not just watery filler. I want to be straight with you about something, because too many people online will sell you a shortcut that doesn't exist. This transformation takes real years, not a single season. Your grandmother's soil was built up over decades, sometimes over land that previous generations had already been improving for decades before that. You are not going to rebuild that in one growing season, no matter what any product label promises you. Give it 3 to 5 years of consistent work before you expect the full transformation, and be suspicious of anyone claiming they can compress that timeline into a single bag of anything. The decline took 70 years to happen. Getting it back is real, it's documented, and thousands of growers are doing it right now. But it's a relationship with your land, not a transaction. Next time you're standing in the produce aisle looking at a tomato, understand exactly what you're looking at. It's not the tomato your grandmother grew. It's something bigger, redder, shinier, built to survive a truck ride, and roughly half as nutritious as the one that came off her vine. Same species, same name on the sign, a completely different food. But here's the part I want you walking away with. None of this is permanent. The seeds still exist. The methods are documented, tested, and sitting right there waiting for anyone willing to put in the work. The only thing standing between you and a garden that actually feeds your family the way it fed hers is deciding to stop following the advice that broke it in the first place. If this changed how you're going to look at your garden this season, do me a favor and hit subscribe, because I've got a lot more of this coming. Real research, real methods, no gimmicks. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 6 factors you're going to tackle first, because I read every single one and I want to know what you're growing back this year. Share this with the one person in your life who still thinks a bag of fertilizer is the answer to everything. Let's bring this back together, one backyard at a time. The harvest starts now.
Yes, one tomato plant, 300 tomatoes. Not a typo, not a trick, 300 tomatoes from a single plant in your backyard, in a pot, or even on a small raised bed.
I know what you're thinking. That sounds insane. But stick with me for the next few minutes, because by the time this video is over, you'll know exactly how to do this yourself, starting today. And here's the part that's going to make you a little angry. This isn't complicated. This isn't expensive. You don't need a greenhouse. You don't need a chemistry degree. The only reason most people don't grow tomatoes like this is because nobody ever told them how. Farmers know, commercial growers know, and they'd rather you keep buying tomatoes at the store for $3 a pound. But today, that stops. Let's get into it.
Before we talk about anything else, before soil, before fertilizer, before any secret trick, you need to pick the right tomato, because the variety you choose decides your ceiling before you even plant a seed. Most people grab whatever's at the garden centre. Big red tomatoes on the label, looks good, take it home. And that's fine, if you want average results. But if you want 300 tomatoes, you need an indeterminate tomato variety. Here's the difference, and this is important. There are 2 types of tomato plants, determinate and indeterminate. Determinate tomatoes, sometimes called bush tomatoes, they grow to a set size. They produce all their fruit at once and then they stop. They're done, finished. You get one big wave of tomatoes and that's it for the season. Indeterminate tomatoes, they never stop growing. They just keep climbing, keep flowering, keep producing all the way until the first frost kills them. If you live in a warm climate, some indeterminate plants will produce for 2, even 3 full years. So right there, that one decision, determinate versus indeterminate, is already the difference between getting 40 tomatoes and getting 300. Now, which specific varieties give you the biggest harvests? Here are the top 3. Number 1, Sun Gold cherry tomatoes. This is the king of high production. One Sun Gold plant, properly cared for, will produce hundreds of small golden tomatoes all season long. They're sweet, they're beautiful, and the plants are incredibly vigorous. If you want to blow people's minds, grow Sun Gold. Number 2, Sweet Million cherry tomatoes. The name says it all. Clusters of small red tomatoes covering the plant all season. Extremely disease resistant, which means less work for you. Number 3, Juliet tomatoes. A little bigger than a cherry, smaller than a beefsteak. Juliet plants are absolute workhorses. They produce firm, crack-resistant fruit for months straight. Home gardeners have reported harvesting well over 200 tomatoes from a single Juliet plant in one season. Pick any one of these and you're already ahead of 90% of backyard gardeners.
Okay, now here's where it gets good. Because choosing the right variety gets you to the starting line. The method is what gets you to 300. Commercial tomato growers, the ones supplying grocery stores and restaurants, they follow a system, a very specific, very intentional system that most home gardeners have never been taught. And it comes down to 3 things: structure, airflow, and signal.
Let me explain each one. Structure means how you train the plant to grow. Most backyard gardeners let their tomato plants grow wild. Branches shooting out in every direction, leaves everywhere, a big tangled mess. It looks impressive, but it's actually killing your yield. Here's what farmers do instead. They use a technique called single stem training, sometimes called the cordon method. You pick one main stem, just one, and you train that single stem to grow straight up, tall and strong, sometimes reaching 8, 10, even 12 feet by end of season. Everything else, every side branch gets removed early on. I know, we'll talk about those side branches in just a second because that is one of the most debated topics in tomato growing, but stay with me. When you train to a single stem, the plant stops wasting energy on growing leaves and branches. All of that energy, every bit of it, goes directly into making fruit. More fruit, bigger fruit, faster fruit. That's structure. Airflow is the second piece. Tomatoes hate being crowded. When leaves are piled on top of each other, moisture gets trapped, disease spreads and pests move in. Farmers space their plants wide, sometimes 5 to 6 feet apart, and they remove lower leaves as the season goes on to keep air moving around the plant. At home, you don't need 6 feet, but give your plant at least 3 feet of space from anything else. And once the plant hits about knee height, start removing the leaves from the bottom 12 inches of the stem. Just pull them off. This alone will dramatically reduce disease problems and keep your plant healthy for the whole season. Signal is the third piece, and this is the one that really separates beginners from expert growers. Tomato plants respond to signals from their environment. When a plant feels stress, when it thinks its survival is at risk, it does one thing. It makes more fruit, because fruit means seeds. Seeds means survival. The plant's entire mission in life is to reproduce, and when it senses danger, it accelerates that mission. Farmers trigger this response on purpose, and here's how you can do it at home. When your tomato plants are young, right after transplanting, do not water them every single day. Water deeply once, then wait. Let the top inch or two of soil dry out completely, then water deeply again. This cycle of stress and relief trains the roots to grow deep and strong, and it signals the plant to start producing more flowers faster. This works. It has been tested over and over again. A plant that gets moderate water stress early in its life will outproduce a plant that gets babied with daily watering every single time.
All right, let's talk about feeding your tomatoes, because this is where most home gardeners make a very expensive mistake. They go to the store, they see a bright bag with a picture of a tomato on it, they buy it, they use it all season, and they wonder why their tomatoes are disappointing. Here's what the bag doesn't tell you. Tomatoes need different food at different stages of their life. What a young tomato plant needs is completely different from what a flowering plant needs. And if you're feeding the same thing the whole time, you're either slowing down your harvest or you're stopping it completely. Here's the breakdown. In the first 4 weeks after transplanting, your tomato plant is a teenager. It's focused on one thing, growing bigger. At this stage, you want a fertilizer that is higher in nitrogen. Nitrogen is what builds leaves and stems and roots. It's the building block of plant structure. A balanced fertilizer, something like a 10-10-10 or a 5-5-5, works perfectly here. If you want to go organic, fish emulsion is excellent at this stage. Mix it with water, pour it around the base of the plant once every 2 weeks. But here's where most people go wrong. They keep using that same high nitrogen fertilizer once the plant starts to flower. And nitrogen, wonderful as it is for growth, will actually tell your plant to keep making leaves and stop making fruit. You'll have the most beautiful, lush, dark green tomato plant in the neighborhood and almost no tomatoes. Once you see the first flowers appear, switch immediately to a fertilizer that is lower in nitrogen and higher in phosphorus and potassium. Look for something like a 5-10-10 or a 3-15-15 on the label. Phosphorus feeds the flowers and the fruit. Potassium builds disease resistance and improves flavor. And here's a completely free fertilizer trick that farmers have used for decades. Crushed eggshells. Tomatoes love calcium. Lack of calcium is the #1 cause of blossom end rot, that ugly black bottom you sometimes see on tomatoes. Every 2 weeks, take a handful of dried, crushed eggshells and work them into the soil around your plant. Free, easy, and it works remarkably well. One more tip: when your plant is in full fruit production, water it with a solution of 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt per gallon of water once a month. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. Magnesium is a core part of chlorophyll, which is how your plant turns sunlight into energy. More energy means more fruit production. It sounds too simple. It isn't.
Now, we have to talk about suckers, because if you search this topic online, you will find people who are absolutely passionate, sometimes even angry about which side they're on. So, let's settle it. First, what is a tomato sucker? A sucker is a new shoot that grows out of the joint where a branch meets the main stem. That joint is called the axil. When a sucker first appears, it looks like a tiny little branch trying to push its way out. If you leave it alone, it grows into a full branch and eventually into what is essentially a whole second plant growing off the first one. Here is the reality. Both sides of the debate are right. It just depends on what you're trying to do. If you are growing an indeterminate tomato variety and your goal is maximum fruit production with strong, healthy plants, you should remove most suckers, especially early in the season. Here's why. Every sucker you let grow takes energy from the main stem. If you let 20 suckers grow, you now have a plant spending its energy in 20 different directions. You get a huge plant, you get a lot of green, but your fruit production drops, your fruit size drops, and your plant becomes much more susceptible to disease because the airflow is terrible. Remove suckers when they are small, less than 2 inches long. At that size, you can snap them off with your fingers. Clean, fast, no tools needed. Once they get bigger, you'll need scissors or pruning shears, and you increase the risk of introducing disease to the wound. Here is the exception, and this is important. Do not remove the sucker that grows just below the first flower cluster. That sucker is special. Let it grow into a second stem. Now you have a 2-stem plant, still controlled, still efficient, but with significantly more fruit-producing capacity. Many expert growers use this 2-stem method as their standard approach and report excellent results. Now, if you are growing a determinate variety, a bush tomato, do not remove any suckers at all. Determinate plants produce their fruit on the side shoots, so removing suckers means removing your harvest. With determinate varieties, just let the plant do its thing. So, the answer to the sucker question is know your variety and know your goal. For indeterminate, high production growing, remove suckers early and often, except that first one below the flower cluster. That's your bonus stem.
Let's bring everything together, because at this point you have more tomato growing knowledge than most people will ever have. Here's your simple action plan. Step 1. Choose an indeterminate variety. Sungold, Sweet Million, or Juliet. Go to your local garden centre or order seeds online. This is your foundation. Step 2. Plant in full sun. Tomatoes need at least 8 hours of direct sunlight every single day. This is non-negotiable. No method in the world overcomes a bad sun location. Step 3. Plant deep. When you transplant your tomato seedling, bury it up to its neck, leaving only the top few sets of leaves above soil. Tomatoes grow roots all along their buried stem. A deeper plant means a stronger root system, means more fruit. Step 4. Train to 1 or 2 stems from the beginning. Remove suckers regularly, except the one below the first flower cluster. Step 5. Water deeply, but not daily. Let the soil dry out slightly between waterings. Train those roots to go deep. Step 6. Feed correctly by stage. Balanced fertilizer early, low nitrogen, high phosphorus and potassium once flowering starts, eggshells throughout the season, Epsom salt once a month during production. Step 7. Remove lower leaves as the plant grows. Keep that bottom 12 inches clear. Airflow is your disease prevention. That's it. 7 steps. No greenhouse, no expensive equipment, no chemistry degree. Just a little knowledge applied consistently, and your plant will do the rest.
Here's something I want you to think about. The tomato plant is one of the most generous plants on Earth. Give it sun,
Give it structure, feed it right, and it will give back to you more than you ever imagined possible. 300 tomatoes from a single plant isn't a fantasy. It's the natural result of working with the plant instead of against it. People who grow tomatoes this way stop buying them at the store entirely. They give bags of tomatoes to their neighbors. They make their own sauce. They freeze them for winter. They eat fresh tomatoes every single day for 3 to 4 months straight, and it costs them almost nothing. That's the life that's available to you, starting this season. If you want to go deeper, I'm going to put a video right here that covers how to build the perfect raised bed for tomatoes, including the exact soil mix that took me years to figure out. That video alone will change how everything grows in your garden. And if this video helped you today, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet. It genuinely helps this channel keep making content like this. Now go plant something.
What if everything you've been taught about growing tomatoes is wrong? Not slightly off, completely, expensively, wastefully wrong. I'm going to show you something today that will genuinely make you angry. Not at me, at every gardening channel, every box store garden center, and every bag of synthetic fertilizer you've ever bought. Because there's a community of farmers in rural Pennsylvania growing tomatoes so big, so flavorful, so absolutely loaded with fruit that professional chefs drive hours out of their way just to get their hands on them. And these farmers don't spend a single dollar on fertilizer, no chemicals, no sprays, no expensive amendments, nothing from a bag, nothing from a store. And they've been doing it this way for over 100 years, while the rest of America got sold a completely different story. I've spent time with these communities. I've watched them work. I've tested their methods in my own garden. And today, I'm going to hand you 8 of their most powerful secrets, completely free, right here. Some of these are going to feel obvious once you hear them. Others are going to seem bizarre. And one of them, I'm warning you right now, smells so bad it will make your eyes water. But that one might be the single most effective thing you do for your tomatoes all season long. Stay with me until the end, because if you leave before Secret 7, you're leaving the best thing on the table. Before we go further, if you're the kind of person who wants to grow real food, not grocery store cardboard, hit that subscribe button right now and drop a tomato in the comments. I read every single one. Let's get into it. Secret number 1 will change how you plant tomatoes forever. And I mean forever. Because once you understand the science behind it, you will never go back to doing it the old way. Here's the thing most gardeners do. They dig a hole straight down, drop the seedling in, cover it up, and walk away feeling good about themselves. Makes sense, right? Plants grow up. Holes go down. Simple. The Amish do something that looks completely wrong the first time you see it. The first time I watched it happen, I genuinely thought the man was trying to kill his plants. He took a healthy tomato seedling, healthy, established, weeks of growth on it, and he laid it sideways in the ground. Not standing up, horizontal. In a shallow trench maybe 4 to 5 inches deep. And then he covered almost the entire plant with soil, leaving only the top cluster of leaves poking out above the surface. I watched him do it to plant after plant after plant, and I had to stop myself from saying something because it looked like a burial, not a planting. And then he explained what was actually happening, and my entire understanding of tomato planting shifted overnight. Here's the science. Tomatoes are one of the only vegetables that can grow roots from any point along their stem that touches soil. Any point. So when you plant vertically in a deep hole, you get one root ball at the bottom. That's your whole foundation. That's everything your plant has to work with all season. But when you lay that same plant horizontally in a trench, you get roots forming all the way down the buried stem. We're talking 12, sometimes 15 inches of active root development that a vertically planted tomato will never achieve, ever. More roots means more water absorption, more nutrient uptake, a stronger, better anchored plant that can survive heat, drought, and stress that would wipe out a conventionally planted tomato. And here's the detail that nobody talks about. Shallow soil warms up faster than deep soil in early spring, so your trench-planted tomatoes are sitting in warmer earth from day one. That's an earlier start, a faster kickoff into the growing season, and a head start on everything that comes next. One technique, no money spent, completely different results. But the root system is only half the battle, because what you put in the soil at planting time matters just as much as how you plant. And this next secret uses something that most Americans throw in the trash every single morning. Every egg you crack, you're throwing away free fertilizer. I'm serious. The Amish figured this out over generations, and now it's confirmed by the same science that sells you calcium supplements at the garden store for $12 a bag. Here's what they do instead. All winter long, every egg cracked for breakfast, for baking, for anything, the shell goes into a bucket. By spring, they have a full season's worth of calcium sitting right there, completely free. At planting time, they crush those shells and place them at the bottom of the hole before the seedling ever goes in. And the reason matters. Calcium is one of the most critical nutrients for tomato development, and specifically, it prevents one of the most frustrating problems home gardeners face: blossom end rot. You've seen it, that ugly, dark, sunken patch on the bottom of what should have been a perfect tomato. Ruins the fruit, ruins the season, and it's caused entirely by calcium deficiency. The Amish don't buy a fix, they build it in from the start. But here's my personal recommendation, and this part matters. Don't just crush the shells coarsely. Really grind them down. The finer the particles, the faster they break down in the soil and start feeding your plant during that critical early window. I use a rolling pin. Some people use a food processor. Either works. And here's the bonus that most people completely miss when they talk about eggshells. The sharp edges of finely crushed shells are a natural physical barrier against cutworms. These are the pests that work overnight, chewing through the stem of your seedling right at the soil line. You plant in the evening, you wake up excited, and half your tomatoes are just lying there dead. Eggshells around the base of the stem create a surface cutworms don't want to cross. Two major problems solved with something you were throwing away this morning. Now, if the soil is right and the planting is right, you still have one more critical decision to make before a single seed goes in the ground. And this one involves what you plant next to your tomatoes, not in them. Most American gardeners treat their garden beds like parking lots. Every plant gets its own isolated spot, and nothing grows too close to anything else. The Amish think about this completely differently, and the difference shows in their harvest. They never plant tomatoes alone. They always plant them with specific neighbors chosen for a reason. The combination they use most is 3 plants working together, a system experienced gardeners call a guild. Marigolds, basil, and carrots. Marigolds go between the tomato rows. The compounds marigolds release into the soil through their roots actively repel nematodes, which are microscopic worms that attack tomato roots underground without you ever seeing them. Above ground, the marigold scent confuses flying pests trying to locate your tomatoes. And at the same time, the flowers attract the pollinators your tomatoes desperately need to set fruit. One plant doing 3 jobs. Basil grows close to the tomatoes, within a foot or 2. I was skeptical about this one, I won't pretend otherwise. But I ran my own side-by-side test for 2 full seasons, and the tomatoes growing next to basil consistently tasted better. Not slightly, noticeably. Research suggests basil releases aromatic compounds that improve the flavor profile of nearby tomatoes. It also deters hornworms, which are among the most destructive pests your tomato plants will ever face. You do not want to learn what a hornworm infestation looks like. Trust me on that. Carrots surprise people the most. Plant carrots near your tomatoes and their roots physically break up compacted soil underground, creating channels that tomato roots can follow deeper into the ground. They're doing excavation work for you that you can't see and can't do yourself. 3 plants, $0, a complete natural protection and support system. But here's the thing. Even with the perfect soil, the perfect planting technique, and the perfect companion plants, there's still one massive threat that destroys more tomatoes in American gardens than almost anything else. And it's not a pest. It's not a disease. It's something most gardeners completely underestimate, and it happens in the middle of every summer, right when you need your plants most. The Amish solved this problem decades ago with something cheap, simple, and almost completely ignored by modern gardeners. Here's what they do. After the seedlings are established, they lay down a thick layer of straw around every single plant. And when I say thick, I want you to picture thicker than you're thinking, 6 to 8 inches deep. Most American gardeners who mulch at all put down maybe 2 inches. The Amish use 3 to 4 times that much, and the difference in plant performance is not subtle. First, moisture. A 6-inch straw layer slows evaporation from the soil surface dramatically. In the middle of an American summer, when soil temperatures spike and water disappears fast, that moisture layer is the difference between a plant that's thriving and a plant that's surviving. I've watched Amish gardeners go 4 or 5 days without watering in July. Not because they're neglecting anything, because the mulch is doing the work for them. Second, weeds. At 6 to 8 inches deep, almost nothing germinates underneath. These gardeners spend their time harvesting and tending, not on their hands and knees pulling grass. Third, and this is the part that took me a while to fully appreciate, straw breaks down slowly over the growing season. As it decomposes, it feeds the microscopic organisms in your soil that create a richer, healthier underground ecosystem for your tomato roots. The mulch is actively improving your soil while it sits there. One warning: keep the straw a few inches away from the main stem. You don't want it pressed against the plant base because that traps moisture and causes rot right where you absolutely cannot afford it. Other than that, pile it on. Cheap, effective, and completely ignored by the majority of American home gardeners. Now we're going to talk about fertilizer, and specifically, I'm going to tell you about the one that costs almost nothing, outperforms most commercial products, and requires you to stop throwing something away that you're probably throwing away right now. I have to warn you, this one is going to feel strange the first time you do it, but stay with me. The Amish fish. Many of these communities fish regularly, and when they do, they don't throw away the heads, the bones, or the scraps. They bury them, about 12 inches below where they're going to plant their tomatoes. They literally plant on top of buried fish material, and as those scraps break down underground, they release a slow, steady stream of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and trace minerals directly into the root zone all season long. It's a timed release fertilizer that works for months, and if you fish, it costs you absolutely nothing. If you don't fish, fish scraps from a local market cost almost nothing. I know exactly what you're thinking. It's going to smell. It's going to attract every raccoon and fox in the county. At 12 inches deep, the odor is completely sealed in. I have been doing this for years, and I have never had an animal dig it up when it's buried at that depth. The smell concern is real at the surface. At 12 inches, it's a non-issue. A farmer named Jacob, who works with an Amish community in rural Pennsylvania, told me something that I've thought about ever since. He said, "In our community, fishing and farming have always been the same thing. The water feeds the land." That philosophy was once common across farming communities in this country. Commercial agriculture abandoned it. The Amish never did, and their soil shows it. Now we're going to talk about something else that most Americans throw away every single winter. And if you have a fireplace, a fire pit, or a wood stove, You need to hear this. Hardwood ash, oak, maple, hickory is rich in potassium, one of the 3 primary nutrients tomatoes need for strong fruit development. It also contains calcium, and it raises the pH of acidic soil. Most American garden soil leans slightly too acidic for tomatoes, which prefer a range between 6 and 6.8. A light dusting of wood ash around your plants can push your soil pH right into that sweet spot. But I need to give you a strong warning here, and I want you to take this seriously. More is not better, not even close. Too much wood ash makes your soil alkaline, and alkaline soil actually locks out the nutrients your tomatoes need, even if those nutrients are physically present in the ground. I have watched gardeners over-apply wood ash and spend the whole summer wondering why their plants looked sick. A thin dusting is all you need, and only clean hardwood ash. Never ash from treated lumber, plywood, or anything painted or coated. Those ashes can contain compounds you do not want anywhere near food you're going to eat. We've talked about the foundation, the planting, the protection, the feeding. Now we're getting into something that changed my results more dramatically than almost anything else on this list. And this is the one I warned you about at the start, the one that smells awful, the one that looks like something went badly wrong in a bucket. If you've been patient, you're about to be rewarded. Comfrey is a plant. Large, leafy, fast-growing, completely unknown to most American gardeners. The Amish grow it specifically for one purpose, to make fertilizer for their tomatoes. And the way they make it is simple and deeply unpleasant in the best possible way. They fill a large bucket with comfrey leaves packed in as tight as they can get them. They add water, they cover it, and they wait 2 weeks. What comes out after those 2 weeks is a dark, thick, genuinely terrible-smelling liquid that is absolutely loaded with potassium, nitrogen, and phosphorus in a form plants can absorb almost immediately. It's a homemade, organic, high-performance tomato fertilizer that you can produce indefinitely for free once you establish a comfrey patch in your yard. Comfrey is a perennial. Plant it once, it comes back every year. You're setting up a permanent free fertilizer source. To use it, dilute 1 part comfrey liquid to 10 parts water. Pour it around the base of your plants every 2 to 3 weeks during flowering and fruiting season. The results are not subtle. Plants fed on comfrey tea produce more flowers. More flowers means more fruit. It's that direct. I know the smell is going to stop some of you. I get it. But here's my honest perspective after years of working with natural growing methods. The most effective natural processes almost never smell good. Compost doesn't smell good. Fish scraps don't smell good. Comfrey tea definitely does not smell good. And every single one of them produces results that no pleasant-smelling synthetic product can match. Plant comfrey once. Make the tea. Hold your nose. Watch what happens to your plants. You'll never go back. Now for the last secret. And this one is the one that surprises people most because it has nothing to do with soil. Nothing to do with planting. Nothing to do with fertilizer at all. It happens while your tomato plants are flowering, and it could increase your tomato count by 30% or more with 15 minutes of your time every other day. Here's something most people don't know about tomato flowers. They're self-pollinating, which means each flower contains both the male and female parts needed to produce fruit. But for pollination to actually happen, the pollen has to move. In nature, bees do this through vibration. When a bee lands on a tomato flower and buzzes, the frequency of that buzzing physically shakes the pollen loose and transfers it within the flower. It's called buzz pollination. Without that vibration, many flowers simply drop off the plant without ever setting fruit. You never see it happen. You just end up with fewer tomatoes and no idea why. The Amish figured out long ago that you don't need a bee to create that vibration. Around midday, when temperatures are warm and pollen is most active, they walk through their tomato rows with a small stick and gently tap each flowering cluster. Light taps, that's it. The vibration does exactly what the bee's buzzing does, and the pollen moves. I tested this myself during a rainy summer when bee activity on my property was low. I hand-pollinated half my tomato plants using this method. I left the other half untouched. Same variety, same soil, same water, same everything. The hand-pollinated plants produced approximately 30% more tomatoes. 30%. From 15 minutes of gentle tapping every other day. That number changed the way I think about what's actually limiting tomato production in most home gardens. It's not the soil. It's not the variety. It's not the water, it's pollination. And it's a problem most gardeners never even know they have. Let me bring this together for you. 8 secrets. 0 synthetic chemicals. 0 expensive equipment. First, trench planting for massive root development that a standard planting method can never produce. Second, crushed eggshells for calcium that prevents blossom end rot and physically deters cutworms at the same time. Third, the 3-plant guild of marigolds, basil, and carrots creating natural pest protection, flavor improvement, and soil work underground. Fourth, deep straw mulching at 6 to 8 inches to lock in moisture, eliminate weeds, and feed your soil microbiome all season. Fifth, buried fish scrap fertilizer, providing slow-release nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium directly where the roots will grow. Sixth, wood ash applied sparingly for potassium, calcium, and pH correction. Seventh, comfrey tea as a homemade organic liquid fertilizer that drives explosive flowering and fruit production. Eighth, hand pollination that adds 30% more tomatoes with nothing but 15 minutes and a small stick. Here's my genuine recommendation. Don't try to implement all 8 of these this season. If you do, you'll overwhelm yourself and you won't be able to tell what's working. Start with 3. If I had to choose for you, I'd say start with trench planting. Add the eggshells at planting time and put basil next to every single tomato you put in the ground. Those 3 changes alone will produce a noticeably different harvest this season. I'd bet on it. Next season, add the comfrey tea and the hand pollination. Build this system the way the Amish built it, slowly, deliberately, with real attention to results. That's how you develop knowledge that compounds over time instead of knowledge you forget by next spring. These methods weren't invented by the Amish. They were inherited, refined, passed down through generations of farmers who understood one thing that commercial agriculture walked away from. The best way to grow food is to work with soil, not override it. Somewhere along the way, American gardening became about buying the right product. The Amish never got that memo, and their tomatoes taste like proof. If you learned something today, something you're actually going to use in your garden this season, please hit that like button before you close this video. It's the single best signal that tells me this kind of content is worth making more of, and it helps this channel reach other people who want to grow real food the real way. I read every comment, I respond when I can, and I'll see you in the next one. Now go grow something worth eating. If you water your tomatoes at night, you might be killing them right now and not even know it. I'm not talking about a little damage, I'm talking about black rot creeping across your best fruit, blight climbing your stems, and an entire season of work turning brown in a single week. And the scary part? The exact habit that's doing it feels like the kindest, most responsible thing you could do for your plants. You think you're helping them. You're actually setting a trap. Stick with me for the next 20-some minutes because I'm about to walk you through 6 watering mistakes that quietly wreck more tomato crops than bugs, blight, and bad weather combined. Some of these you're probably doing right now without a clue. One of them is the reason half the tomatoes you've ever grown split open or rotted from the bottom, and you probably blamed a disease that was never even there. By the end of this, you're going to know exactly why that happened and exactly how to fix it without spending a dime on some new gadget or fancy fertilizer. Just a change in how and when you turn that hose on. So if you've ever pulled a tomato off the vine, flipped it over, and found the bottom black and sunk in like it was rotting from the inside, you need this video. If you've ever watched a perfect, ripe tomato just split wide open for no reason at all, you need this video. And if your leaves have ever gone yellow and spotty, and you've spent money on fungicide trying to chase down a disease that wasn't the real problem, you especially need this video because I guarantee you the real culprit was hiding in plain sight the whole time. Before we get into it, if this is helping you out at all, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what state you're growing in. I read every one of them, and it helps me know what kind of climate problems to cover next. Now let's get into mistake number 1, and I promise you, this one's going to surprise you. Mistake number 1 is watering your tomatoes in the evening. Now think about this for a second. You get home from work, the sun's dropping, the heat's finally breaking, and it just feels right to give your plants a nice cool drink before bed. Feels neighborly, feels responsible. I did it for years myself and never thought twice about it. But here's what's actually happening while you're sleeping that night. Any water that lands on those leaves doesn't dry off. It just sits there all night long, cool, dark, and wet. And if you know anything about fungus, you know that's exactly the 3 things it needs to throw a party. Cool, wet, dark. Evening watering hands fungus all 3 on a silver platter, and by morning, spores that would have died in an hour of sunlight have had 8 or 9 hours to move in and set up shop. That's how you get early blight. That's how you get leaf spot. That's how those ugly brown and yellow splotches start creeping up your plant one leaf at a time until half your foliage looks sick and your fruit production starts dropping off a cliff. Here's the fix, and it costs you nothing. Water in the morning, early, right when you're up with your coffee. Give the plant a full drink, and the second that sun climbs up, it dries any splash on those leaves off fast. Your plant goes into the hot part of the day already hydrated, and it heads into the night bone dry on the leaves, which is exactly where fungus goes to starve. Mornings. Every single time. Write it on your barn wall if you have to. But here's the thing. Even if you fix your timing, there's a second mistake riding right alongside it. And this one's even sneakier, because it's not about when you water, it's about where. Mistake number 2 is watering the plant instead of watering the soil. Picture this. You're out there with the hose or the watering can, and you just give the whole plant a nice shower from up top, leaves and all. It feels generous, feels like a good soaking rain. Except here's what most folks don't realize. A tomato plant doesn't drink through its leaves. It drinks through its roots, down in the dirt. So every drop that landed on those leaves did absolutely nothing for the plant's health. Nothing. It just sat there, and like we just talked about, invited disease to move in. But it gets worse than that. When water comes down hard and smacks bare dirt, it splashes. And that splash carries soil straight up onto your lowest leaves. And that soil, especially if you've had blight in your garden before, even years back, is loaded with dormant spores just waiting for a ride. That splash up is how a huge percentage of blight outbreaks actually start. Not from the sky, from the ground bouncing upward onto your plant. So here's what you do instead. Water low, right at the base of the plant, straight onto the soil where the roots are living. Keep those leaves as dry as you possibly can. And if you really want to level up, get yourself a soaker hose, one of those ones that weeps water out slow along its whole length, and snake it along the ground around your plants. Set it, forget it, and every drop goes exactly where the roots need it without ever touching a leaf. This one change alone will save you a mountain of heartache down the road. Now, you'd think once you've got the timing right and the placement right, you're in the clear. You are not. Because mistake number 3 is about to undo everything you just fixed. and it's the one almost every well-meaning gardener makes without even realizing it's a mistake at all. Mistake number 3 is watering a little bit every single day. This one's sneaky because it looks like dedication. You're out there every morning giving your tomatoes a quick splash, checking in on them, being a good caretaker. Your heart's in the right place. But here's the hard truth. You're training that plant to be weak. Think about it from the root's point of view. If water's always sitting right there in the top inch or 2 of soil, why would any root bother growing down deep to find it? It wouldn't. Roots are lazy by nature. They'll take the easy path every time. And if the easy path is right at the surface, that's exactly where they'll stay. Shallow, fragile, completely dependent on you showing up every single day without fail. And that's fine, right up until the day you can't show up. First real heat wave that rolls through, first weekend you go visit the grandkids and forget to ask a neighbor to water for you, and that plant collapses, wilts, panics, because it's got nothing down deep to fall back on. You built a plant with no savings account, and the first emergency wiped it out. Here's what you do instead. Water deep and water less often. One real good soak that pushes water down 6 to 8 inches into the soil, not just wetting the surface. And here's how you actually check if you got that deep, because most folks think they did and they didn't. Wait a bit after watering, then push a trowel or a long screwdriver down into the ground. It'll slide easy through wet soil and stop hard the second it hits dry. You'll be shocked. Most people are only getting an inch or 2 down when they need to be going a whole lot deeper than that. Then here's the part that feels wrong but isn't. You leave it alone. Let that top layer dry out for a few days. And because the surface goes dry, those roots have no choice but to go chasing water downward, digging deep into the ground, building themselves into a strong, resilient root system that can shrug off a dry spell that would have killed a shallow-rooted plant. Deep and slow beats quick and often, every single time, no exceptions. Now here's where it gets serious, because mistake number 4 is the one that causes the most heartbreak of this entire list. And if you've ever grown a tomato that split open or rotted black on the bottom, I promise you, what I'm about to tell you is exactly what happened to you. Mistake number 4 is letting your watering swing wildly, bone dry for a week, then a big flood, then bone dry again. This is the mistake that creates 2 problems that absolutely gut a tomato grower, and both of them get blamed on the wrong thing almost every single time. The first one. You've picked a beautiful, heavy, ripe tomato, flipped it over to check it, and the whole bottom end is black, leathery, and sunk in, like it rotted right there on the vine while it was still attached. That's called blossom end rot, and I want you to hear this clearly because it trips up even experienced growers. It is not a disease. 9 times out of 10, that's uneven watering, plain and simple. Here's why. Your tomato plant needs steady, consistent moisture to pull calcium up out of the soil and carry it into that developing fruit. When you let the soil go bone dry and then flood it, dry again, flood again, that calcium transport system gets completely disrupted. The fruit doesn't get what it needs, and you end up with that ugly black bottom that looks exactly like some kind of infection but has nothing to do with germs or fungus at all. I learned this one the hard way, and it stung. I had a whole row of gorgeous beefsteak tomatoes one summer, and nearly every single one of them rotted black on the bottom. I was convinced I had some kind of disease outbreak, sprayed them, fussed over them, tried everything I could think of, and nothing worked because I was chasing the wrong enemy the entire time. Turned out I was watering them heavy on the weekends when I had time, then letting them go bone dry all week while I was busy. The second I evened that rhythm out, the rot stopped completely. Just like that. I wish somebody had sat me down and told me sooner, and that's exactly why I'm telling you now. The second problem from this same mistake is cracking. You've seen it. A tomato splits wide open, big ugly cracks running around the top like it just couldn't hold itself together. Same root cause. The plant goes thirsty for days, then gets hit with a sudden heavy watering, and the fruit swells up so fast the skin physically cannot keep pace. It splits right open, and there goes a perfect tomato, ruined right before harvest. Two brutal problems, one simple fix. Keep your watering steady and consistent. Don't let it swing from desert to swamp and back again. Your tomato wants the same drink, on the same rhythm, every single time. Steady is what wins, and it's not complicated, it's just a habit you have to build. Now, you might be thinking, all right, I've got the timing down, the placement down, the depth down, the consistency down. Surely that's everything. But there's a fifth mistake sitting right underneath all of this, and it's the one single fix that makes every other fix on this list 10 times easier to actually pull off. Mistake number 5 is growing your tomatoes in bare, naked dirt with nothing covering the soil. Here's why this one matters so much. If your soil is sitting out there exposed, baking under direct sun all day long, then every drop of water you just worked so hard to get down deep is going to evaporate right back out, fast. You're fighting a losing battle. Your soil swings from wet to bone dry in almost no time at all, which makes mistake number 4, that dangerous inconsistency, almost impossible to avoid no matter how disciplined you try to be. But lay down a good thick blanket of mulch. 2 or 3 inches of straw, shredded leaves, or dried grass clippings spread right around the base of your plants, and you've completely changed the game. That mulch works like a sponge and a sunshade at the same time. It locks moisture down in the soil so you're not fighting evaporation anymore. It keeps the soil temperature steady and even instead of swinging with the sun. And as a bonus, remember that splash-up problem from mistake number 2, the one that flings disease-carrying soil onto your leaves? A thick layer of mulch stops that cold, because the water simply can't kick dirt up through it. I'm telling you straight, mulch alone fixes about half the problems on this entire list. If you only take one thing away from this video and go do it today, go mulch your tomatoes. It's cheap, it's fast, and it will change how much water and worry you're pouring into that garden for the rest of the season. All right, we've made it to the final mistake, and this one ties every single thing we've talked about together. If you've been nodding along this whole time thinking, okay, I've got my system, I water on a schedule, I do it right every time, I want you to actually listen closely here, because this last one catches disciplined growers just as often as lazy ones. Mistake number 6 is watering on autopilot. This is watering your tomatoes because it's Tuesday, and Tuesday is watering day, rain or shine, hot or cool, doesn't matter. The calendar says water, so you water. And here's what almost nobody talks about. You can drown a tomato plant just as easily as you can starve it of water. Overdoing it is every bit as dangerous as underdoing it. A tomato plant sitting in soggy, waterlogged soil has roots that literally cannot breathe. They start to rot, and the plant dies just as dead as if you never gave it a single drop, except it took longer and it was more painful to watch. And even short of killing it outright, too much water washes the flavor right out of your fruit. You end up with big, watery, bland tomatoes that look great on the vine and taste like almost nothing at all. All that work, and the payoff is a tomato that disappoints you. So before you ever turn that hose on again, do this one simple thing. Stick your finger down into the soil a couple inches deep. If it's still moist down there, leave it alone. It doesn't need a thing, and watering it anyway is only going to hurt it. If it comes out dry, then go ahead and water. Let the actual plant tell you what it needs. Stop letting a calendar make decisions your finger could make better in 5 seconds. Now, quick note, if you're growing in pots or containers instead of straight in the ground, because the rules shift a little. A pot dries out a whole lot faster than a garden bed, especially a dark-colored or clay pot baking in direct sun. Those container tomatoes might need water every single day in the peak of summer, sometimes even twice a day when it's really hot. But the core rule never changes. You don't guess. You check. Finger down in that soil, and when the top inch goes dry, give it a good soak until water runs clear out the bottom holes. Garden bed or container, the finger never lies to you. And here's a little bonus trick. Almost nobody talks about this one. And it's the kind of thing old market growers have used for generations to get that deep, rich, old-fashioned tomato flavor everybody's chasing. In the final couple weeks before your tomatoes ripen, ease off the water just a touch. Let the plant get a little bit thirsty. That mild stress concentrates the sugars inside the fruit, and you end up with a tomato that tastes noticeably sweeter and richer than one that was kept fat and happy on water right up to the finish line. It's a small move, but it's the difference between a good tomato and the best tomato you've ever grown. So let's bring this all the way home, because that's a lot to carry, and I don't want you walking away fuzzy on any of it. Mistake number 1, don't water in the evening. That trapped moisture on your leaves overnight is a green light for fungus and blight to move in while you sleep. Water in the morning instead, every time. Mistake number 2, don't water the plant. Water the soil. Your tomato drinks through its roots, not its leaves, and wetting the foliage does nothing but invite disease and splash contaminated soil up onto your lower leaves. Mistake number 3, stop giving a little sip every single day. That trains shallow, weak roots that collapse the moment life gets busy or the weather turns brutal. Water deep and less often, and force those roots to dig down where it's safe. Mistake number 4, and this is the big one. Don't let your watering swing wildly between bone dry and flooded. That inconsistency is the real cause behind blossom, end-rot, and cracking, 2 problems that get blamed on disease constantly when the truth was sitting in your watering can the whole time. Mistake number 5, don't leave your soil bare and exposed. Mulch it, and you'll lock in moisture, protect your roots from temperature swings, and block that disease-spreading splash up before it ever starts. And mistake number 6, don't water on autopilot just because the calendar told you to. Check the soil with your own finger and let the plant's actual condition make the call, not a schedule stuck on your fridge. Every single one of these fixes costs you nothing but a shift in habit. Not one new tool, not one bag of expensive fertilizer, not one trip to the store. Just doing what you're already doing, only smarter, only with a little more attention to what that plant is actually telling you. So here's what I want you to do. Go out there today, right now if you can, and take an honest, hard look at how you've actually been watering, not how you think you've been watering, how you've really been doing it. Pick one mistake off this list, just one, and fix it this week. I promise you, you will see the difference before this season's even over. And once you see it, you'll wonder how you ever grew tomatoes any other way. If this helped you out even a little, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, because I've got a whole lot more of this plain talk, no-nonsense garden help coming every single week, and I don't want you missing it. Drop a comment and tell me which one of these 6 mistakes hit closest to home. I promise you, you are not alone in it. Half the folks watching this are nodding along right with you. And if you know somebody, a neighbor, a family member, anybody who's been fighting their tomato patch and can't figure out why, send this their way. Might just save their whole season. Take care of those plants, take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.